Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the God the Artist podcast. I'm your host, Morgan McCarver, and today I'll be reading some more of my book, God the Artist, Discovering God's Creative Side Through Pottery. Today we'll be reading chapter 11, Bisque Firing and the Trials of Life. 1 Corinthians 3:12-15. Now if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive an award. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. Daniel 3:25. He answered and said, But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the appearance of the fourth is like a son of the gods. Exodus 9:8-10. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Take handfuls of soot from the kiln, and let Moses throw them into the air in the sight of Pharaoh. It shall become fine dust over all the land of Egypt, and become boils breaking out in sores on man and beast throughout all the land of Egypt. So they took soot from the kiln and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses threw it in the air, and it became boils breaking out in the sores of man and beast. James 1:2-3. Count it all joy, brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. 1 Peter 1:6-7. In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith may be more precious than gold, that perishes though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. 2 Peter 2:9. Then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment. Deuteronomy 31:8. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Most pottery you're familiar with will undergo at least 2 firings. The first firing, a bisque or biscuit firing, is relatively quick and not very hot in the ceramics world, only reaching around 1945 degrees Fahrenheit. This first firing turns greenware, finished clay pieces that haven't yet been fired, into bisqueware. It removes all of the water and moisture from the piece. A chemical change happens to the clay at this temperature, making the clay bond to itself. The clay is not food safe at the bisque stage because it is still quite porous. The porosity of the clay helps it accept the glaze that will be added in the next chapter. You can tell the difference between clay that hasn't been fired and clay that has. If you gently tap on unfired clay with your fingernail, it will sound dull, like tapping on a granite countertop. If you tap the same way onto bisque-fired pottery, it should give off a high pinging sound like a tuning fork. Glazed and vitrified pottery will produce fuller pinging sounds than bisqueware. The bisque firing is the true test of whether a piece was made correctly. If the vessel had any cracks before firing, the cracks will only get bigger. The piece might warp because it was handled too early in the drying stage, or because it did not dry evenly. Sometimes a piece will explode with such force that it causes other pieces in the kiln to break or chip and can even damage the kiln. Our actions as disciples of Christ can create similar explosive situations in cracked relationships. We might not realize the impact we have on others' lives. In his letter to the Corinthians, Paul says, Each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. 1 Corinthians 3:13. The heat of the kiln, the fire, reveals the true nature of the piece. The bisque firing solidifies the piece into one solid unit, and the form cannot be easily altered. The similarities in life are amazing. Likewise, stressful, tough times reveal our true natures. In the heat of the moment, do we stay calm or do we blow up at those around us? In Daniel 3, three friends literally go inside a fiery furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do not bow down or worship King Nebuchadnezzar's idol. They are sentenced to die in a kiln most likely used for metals or clay. It is not stated what this furnace was really being used for, perhaps blacksmithing, for making the idol. We do know the kiln was overheated and it actually burned and killed the men who were sent to throw the three others in. Nebuchadnezzar then notices a fourth man in the fire. One is like the son of the gods, and he is walking around unharmed. Daniel 3:25b. Nebuchadnezzar calls the three out of the kiln and blesses their God who saved them from the fire. These men stood amazingly strong under pressure. I love the image of Jesus in the fire with them as well. God proved he is more powerful than the earthly trials and softened Nebuchadnezzar's heart in the process. What a testament of faith to face death by fire and still rely on God. The three had no idea what would happen to them. They made no claims about being saved or protected. They only chose to follow God until the end. And just like with the bisqueware for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it was not the end. Like the clay, we change when we undergo hard times. Sometimes these situations are even referenced symbolically as fire. We as Christians have to go through difficult times so that we can mature spiritually. It can be challenging, but this is where it is crucial that we rely on God for our strength and guidance. The clay doesn't know what temperature it needs to be fired to. That's the potter's job to know. We don't know what kinds of trials we need to undergo to become the person God wants us to be, but He does. And the best part is that He also knows how to get us through them as well. At times like these, it is important to have a good foundation in God and His Word. I love it when a song or Bible verse pops into my head right when I need it. I'll find myself subconsciously humming a tune with no lyrics, but then when I focus my attention on the tune, I realize that it is a Christian song with lyrics pertaining to my exact situation. We all have different levels of trials or fires we must go through. Some seem hotter or harder than others. Some people seem to get the cooler fires that look like they don't hurt as much as ours. Don't be discouraged. You are made to face trials specifically designed to make you stronger in your faith. Others are not created to walk your path of life. Only you can fulfill God's will for your life. You must go through these fires to make yourself and your relationship with God stronger. Remember Jonah running from God? In Jonah 1, he thought he could escape his fate by going to a foreign area to evangelize, but he ends up just taking the hard way, traveling by whale. But God was with him every step of the journey. God helped Jonah fulfill his will for Jonah's life and for God's plan. Once Jonah has been swallowed by the whale, he prays to God. We don't remember this part from childhood Sunday school lesson, but I think this is a prayer worth reading. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight. Yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you, into your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you what I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out on dry land. Jonah 2:1-10. This is a prayer of both distress and praise. Jonah has recognized and come to accept that God's plan is more important than his life. He prays to God from inside the fish, asking God for deliverance and promising a sacrifice to God if he makes it out of the fish alive. He could not get out of the fish on his own. He needed God to release him. In the same way, pots being fired in the kiln cannot get out of the kiln on their own. They can explode inside the kiln, but they cannot get out of the kiln. The potter cannot remove the pieces from the kiln until the firing is complete, unless this is an alternate firing type. With most firing methods, especially for bisque firings, the piece must remain in the kiln for the entire firing. If the piece is pulled out of the kiln before it is cooled back off, the thermal shock could crack the piece. We must see our trials through to the end. If we are removed from them before the Lord plans, then we might not learn what we are supposed to from these trials. God uses the ashes from most likely a wood kiln to symbolize one of the trials in the Old Testament. God tells Moses and Aaron to take handfuls of soot from the kiln and let Moses throw them in the air in the sight of Pharaoh. The soot became boils on the skin of human beings and animals alike once it had been thrown into the air. The soot probably is wood ash. Wood ash itself can cause skin irritation when mixed with water, but these boils were much worse. These kilns were probably the brick firing kilns the Israelites worked during their captivity in Egypt. How appropriate that God would use this symbolism. Slavery and making bricks were trials that the Israelites were facing at the time, especially when Pharaoh kept making it harder and harder to keep up production. These trials were physically and mentally exhausting, and they were killing the Israelites. I'm sure Pharaoh was starting to connect symbolism, even though God had hardened his heart. Trials aren't just in the Old Testament, though. Many followers of Jesus, especially the disciples, experienced countless trials. James reminds us to count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. James 1:2. Facing trials in the name of Jesus can be scary. James says we should be glad that we are strong enough in our faith for others to recognize us as Christians and that God allows us to be put under trials. Peter says our lives on earth are short, and as Christians we are guaranteed to face trials. He also says, "In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold, that it perishes though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor of the revelation of Jesus Christ." 1 Peter 1:6-8. Peter says that our faith is more valuable than gold, and that by keeping our faith, even through the heat of the trials, Jesus Christ will be glorified. Guess what temperature gold melts at? It melts at 1,948 degrees Fahrenheit. But God didn't compare us to gold. We are the clay, and He is our potter. Remember the bisque firing? The first firing is 1,945 degrees Fahrenheit. The second firing for most clays is the same exact temperature or even hotter. Not only is our faith more valuable than gold, but through Christ it is twice as strong under fire. Don't worry though, we aren't alone in our faith or in our trials. Peter tells us again, the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment. 2 Peter 2:9. If God allows us to face trials, then He is right there beside us. He is helping us through our hard times if we ask Him. The potter doesn't forget about the piece in the kiln. The potter can't wait until the firing is over and the kiln is cool enough for the piece to be unloaded. God does not enjoy suffering, and there is no suffering in heaven. Unlike the potters here on earth, God can withstand the heat again and again. He is the potter who is inside the kiln with his clay. He sees everything that happens to them at all times and knows exactly what is going on. He promises us, just like He did with Joshua, "It is the Lord that goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed." Deuteronomy 31:8. The Lord has already seen what is to come because time cannot constrain Him. He not only walks alongside you, but He has already been there. He guides you every step of the way. If you asked God to turn down the heat of your trials, you would not be as strong as you are now. You would miss out on the beauty of learning to rely solely on Him. You might crack under the slightest pressure, rendering you useless. I admit I have not enjoyed my fires. I was resentful about going through back surgery for years. I was mad at the doctor for performing the surgery, and I was also mad at my parents for allowing it to happen. It felt like the surgery had wrecked my entire world. When looking back on it, I can tell it gave me guidance and perseverance. Praying in the months leading up to my surgery brought me closer to God than I had ever thought possible, and now I'm even closer to Him still. Please seek Christian help if you feel as defeated as I did then. There's nothing wrong with sharing your burdens with others. In fact, it is encouraged. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. Paul encourages us to help each other overcome sins, trials, and struggles, but sometimes asking for help can be the hardest part. Just like the artist chooses the clay, God chose you specifically to do the purpose He had in mind for you. God is in control. He has chosen the plan for your life. Now all you have to do is trust in Him. Creativity Challenge. Learning Bible verses as a child in Sunday school was the foundation I needed to give me the strength during difficult times. Even if I don't remember the whole verse, a little snippet running through my head like a mantra can change my mood for the day or the situation. It's never too late to learn verses. Choose a verse that is meaningful to you, write it on a note card, and place it on a mirror or calendar, somewhere you can look at it every day. Find creative ways to memorize the verse you picked. Blessings.